It is 5 o'clock, and for anybody who is just waking up in some other part of the world, there is big news from India. India has hit terror bases inside Pakistan, including Pakistan's Punjab area, directly hitting the terror bases of the Lashkar-e-Taiba and of the Jaish-e-Mohammed. We know the details. 9 terror bases have been hit in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, as well as Pakistan's Punjab. These include terror bases of the Lashkar-e-Taiba's Murid Ki headquarters in Punjab, as well as the Jaish-e-Mohammed terror bases in Bahawalpur. 24 missile strikes in a coordinated operation called Operation Sindoor, in which all 3 military services were involved: the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. This is the first time that such a tri-service operation has been conducted by the Indian military since the 1971 war. Indian officials have released videos. The Indian Army, rather, has released videos. You're seeing them on your screen. This is video footage of the different terror bases that were hit, and you'll see several of those videos come up on our screen. These are officially released by the military. An official briefing was done by 2 women military officers of the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force, alongside Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri. Officials in India say that what has been undertaken in Operation Sindoor is not to be looked at as merely quote unquote a military response, but a shift in strategic doctrine. One official said it shows that India is able to act, and I'm quoting him here, swiftly, unapologetically, and surgically. Pakistan's reactions will come and have started coming. Artillery firing has returned to the line of control after the 2003 ceasefire. 9 civilians on the Indian side have been reported to have lost their lives in that firing. An order has now been placed for the evacuation of civilians, pulling them further back from the line of control and the international border. Those are images of Pakistan firing at the line of control. I want to now shift to images of actually the videos of what happened when the missile struck Pakistan. So if we can bring up those videos, please. And I also want to play out a statement of Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, who is speaking. As soon as he's ready, we'll play that out as well. I want to introduce our guests. This is a continuous rolling coverage. We have been live now for the last 11 hours, and we'll keep going. Ambassador Dilip Sinha, veteran diplomat, is with us. And from Washington today, I'm joined by Christine Fair, one of the foremost scholars on Pakistan and these terror outfits. And thank you very much, Christine Fair, for joining us. Dilip Sinha, your first response to the import of what we have seen. You know, Pakistan, as we know, is dominated by Punjab. Pakistan's politics is dominated by Punjab. Pakistan's military is dominated by Punjab. Pakistan's economy is dominated by Punjab. The import of India striking inside Pakistan's Punjab cannot be underestimated. Your first comments, Ambassador Dilip Sinha.
This is obviously a very daring strike that we have carried out. It was a kind of strike that perhaps was expected, because you could see that a lot of preparations were being made with high-level talks by India. The outrage among the Indian public was extremely strong. The attack on civilians had raised public anger, and there was perhaps need to give vent to that anger by striking inside Pakistan at the terror camps. The attacks have been confined to the terror camps. There are no military installations have been attacked. So clearly, India does not want to escalate the situation by getting the military involved. But as you mentioned, we have struck inside Punjab, and in Punjab, the military is extremely strong. The military will try to use these attacks both to ginger up support for itself and to try and show that it is capable of striking back. So we have to be prepared for that. We are still in the fog of war. We don't know exactly what happened and whether there were any losses sustained by our people. So we have to wait and see what details emerge from there. Pakistan has made certain claims, but this is a strike that has been made by the government to show that it is not willing to take terror attacks lying down.
And Dilip Sinha, before I bring in Christine, the fact that Bahawalpur and Muridke, Bahawalpur is what 100 km from our border. So it is really very different, much further, much harder, much more specific than Balakot. And unlike Balakot, where you had some naysayers saying, show us the evidence, video upon video upon video has been filmed both during the operation and has been released after it. So, there is a larger message. I imagine that all of this video evidence will be used as the MEA has started briefing a number of different ambassadors and diplomats in Delhi.
Well, yes, this attack has been done essentially to satisfy public opinion in India, the public anger, and also to overcome some of the lacuna that had been left in the case of the Balakot attack, where questions had been raised. So this time they have taken the precaution to ensure that not only are they striking deep inside Pakistan, but also providing the necessary evidence to show that the attack took place. Of course, Pakistan itself has acknowledged the attacks. It has acknowledged certain casualties. So those doubting Thomases in India would be silenced with this evidence, and also the public anger that had built up would also need to be satisfied with this attack.
I just want to play out Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. He's spoken moments ago, and then I'll come to Professor Christine Fair. Take a look.
तो जैसे कि आप सबको जानकारी है कि कल रात हमारी भारतीय सेनाओं ने अपने अद्भुत शौर्य और पराक्रम का परिचय देते हुए एक नया इतिहास रच दिया है। साथियों, भारत की सेना ने सटीकता, सतर्कता और संवेदनशीलता के साथ कार्रवाई की है। हमने जो लक्ष्य तय किए थे उन्हें ठीक समय तय योजना के अनुसार सटीकता से उन्होंने ध्वस्त किया है और किसी भी नागरिक ठिकाने, सिविलियन पॉपुलेशन को जरा भी प्रभावित न होने देने की संवेदनशीलता भी हमारी सेना ने दिखाई है। यानी एक तरीके से देखा जाए तो हम कह सकते हैं एक तरीके की सटीकता, सतर्कता और मानवीयता यह हमारी भारत की सेना के जवानों ने दिखाई है, जिसके लिए मैं हमारे सेना के जवानों और अधिकारियों को पूरे देश की ओर से मैं साधुवाद देता हूं और सेना को संपूर्ण संबल प्रदान करने के लिए अपने प्रधानमंत्री माननीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी को भी मैं साधुवाद देता हूं।
Defense Minister Rajnath Singh there saying that this has been a historic operation. Professor Christine Fair, what is the view from Washington? We had a rather banal statement by American President Donald Trump, who for some reason keeps reiterating that India and Pakistan have been fighting for thousands of years, and he said something pretty similar today. But I'm imagining what is said on camera is less important than what's actually going on behind the scenes. This administration is seen to be less soft on Pakistan than the Biden administration was. What is, in your estimation, the view from DC?
30 here. So I'm not sure.
I know. Sorry about that.
I'm not sure we have a view coming in from DC. I mean, when you elect a clown, you should expect a circus. So I don't think we should be looking for leadership from the pronouncements of President Trump. But I do repose a lot of confidence in Paul Kapoor. I don't know if he's been confirmed yet, but he was the person that was tasked to be the Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia. He and I have long discussed Pakistan, and we are pretty pretty much of the same minds about what Pakistan does, why it does it, and with what resources. He wrote a book called Jihad as Grand Strategy, which for anyone who knows Pakistan knows that that's a pretty apt description. So, I agree with everything that Ambassador Sinha has said. Unfortunately, I don't think that this strategically changes Pakistan's calculus. I think this has been a really important demonstration of escalation, the ability to target the Punjab. We don't know, by the way, how Pakistan is going to respond. Just as we don't know fully what munitions were used. We don't have independent casualty assessments. We just have explosions that happen in the darkness. Quite frankly, that's not terribly elucidating. But we also have unconfirmed reports of Indian aircraft going down. The New York Times reports at least one Indian official who confirmed 3 aircraft have been down, although the reasons for the aircraft being down were not given and stated is unclear. So
and as of now, sorry to interject there. I just wanted to say, as of now, we have a formal statement from the Press Information Bureau on those fighter jets saying that Pakistan has shared old pictures. In fact, I think we have that PIB release. So as of now, that's what we have. The images that have been shared.
I'm going to say this. We also had a lot of things come out of Pulwama that weren't true either. So I'm a professor. So my job is not to take press reports at face value. My job is to wait for data to come in. So for me, this is an uncomfortable position because I don't like giving live commentary on things when so little is known. But what we do know is that Pakistan is going to have to respond. For all the reasons that Ambassador Sinha had noted, the Punjab, and as you yourself had noted, the Punjab is really ground zero for much of what happens in Pakistan. And the Pakistan army, which hasn't been discussed yet, is really at its nadir in public opinion. Many Pakistanis have soured on the Pakistan army, which is an extraordinary development, largely because of its treatment of Imran Khan. And so this is going to be used by the Pakistan army to burnish its credentials at home amidst its flagging reputation. So we're going to have to expect some response from Pakistan. And then I think the most important question for those of us that have studied the India-Pakistan, or I would say Pakistan's conflict with India, is what's going to be the de-escalation off-ramp. What we had in 2019 was the Dusre Banda Di Kahani, which allowed the Indians to say there was a second pilot, which allowed the Indians to come up with this narrative that it shot down an F-16. And that, along with the return of Abhinandan, was part of the escalation, de-escalation off-ramp. So what I'm looking for is, after Pakistan responds, what's going to be the natural de-escalation pathway to this crisis?
Christine Fair, before I get to the de-escalation, if I can just ask you to talk a little bit about the Lashkar and the Jaish. One of the things that puzzles me, and I've done some commentary on Western media in between our live programming, is how little awareness there is of the Lashkar, of the Jaish as being extensions of the Pakistan army, despite the fact that the United States, for example, recognizes the Lashkar as a terror group, as does the United Kingdom. Yet when Western media tells this story, they position this as a fight between India and Pakistan, as opposed to how Indians see it, which is that, listen, you sent your terrorists in, you killed tourists in Pahalgam, you targeted them this time for their religion, and India has a right to respond. So if you could speak a little bit about your understanding, Hafiz Saeed and Masood Azhar would have been taken into protection. Pakistan would have been anticipating this, and they're bound to resurface later. Correct. Why are these two terrorists so critical to the Pakistan military?
So the two organizations are distinct or are important for very different reasons. So for one, so what both have in common is that both organizations only attack outside of Pakistan. They have never conducted operations within Pakistan itself. Now, when it comes to Jaish-e-Mohammed, which is a Deobandi organization, it has overlapping membership with Lashkar Jangvi, Sipe-Sabe, Pakistan, and the TTP. So elements of the Jaish-e-Mohammed, and of course they share an archipelago of Deobandi mosques and madrasas. So there is a component of the Jaish that contributes to Pakistan instability. And the way the Pakistan army has used Jaish-e-Mohammed it's really as a Garvapasi movement for wayward Deobandi terrorists. Don't fight in Lashkar-e-Jhangvi and kill Pakistanis. Come back to Jaish-e-Mohammed and kill Indians. So Jaish is a very disciplined organization, and it also serves, as I said, as this Garvapasi program for wayward Deobandi terrorists who are striking deep in India, in Pakistan. Lashkar-e-Taiba is a very different organization. Lashkar-e-Taiba has never really splintered. The splinters, if they've occurred, they've been very minimal over time. And Lashkar-e-Taiba really kills at the behest of the Pakistan army. Unlike Jaish-e-Mohammed, which has this very diffuse, it's like a network of networks with these other Deobandi organizations, the leadership chain of Lashkar-e-Taiba is very tight and is a very vertically organized institution. And it exclusively kills at the behest of the Pakistan army. But just as Jaish-e-Mohammed has a domestic purpose, so does Lashkar-e-Taiba. Lashkar-e-Taiba is very much at odds with the Islamic State, very much at odds with the Deobandi institutions that engage in takfiri, and they institutionally and ideologically provide a bulwark against those organizations. So both organizations provide really important services to the Pakistani state in terms of domestic policy and domestic security, as well as external security, which is killing at the behest of the army in India and at different points in time, also in Afghanistan.
Thank you. I think that was a brilliant explanation of the Lashkar and the Jaish. I'm just going to read out the two comments that you made, the quotable quotes. The Jaish is a ghar wapsi of sorts for Deobandi terrorists, and the Lashkar really only kills at the behest of the Pakistan army. Both terror groups never kill within Pakistan. That's a critical point. Again, because public memory is so short, Ambassador Sinha, Masood Azhar was released during the hijacking of the IC-814 in exchange for the safety of the hijacked passengers on board that plane in 1999, shortly after the Kargil war. Asim Munir seems set on being a crazier version of Musharraf. And therefore, my question now becomes, India doesn't seek escalation. Pakistan needs some sort of face saver. And that brings us to Professor Fair's question. How do both countries pull back from the brink, or is this going to step up on the escalatory ladder before it comes down? Ambassador Sinha.
No, I think Professor Fair is extremely accurate in her description of how these two organizations operate outside Pakistan and the kind of control structure that they have. The problem that I have faced, I see in our relations with Pakistan, is that when Pakistan does something wrong, for example, when Hafiz Saeed was released and there were other terror acts committed by Pakistan, then we let Pakistan off the hook, as did the Western countries. So instead of putting continuous pressure upon Pakistan to take action against these people, just because they had been released during the hijacking incident does not mean that they then could become normal citizens of Pakistan and live happily inside Pakistan. The international pressure had to continue. But not only did the Western countries release that pressure on Pakistan, we also did the same thing. We also started talking to Pakistan and then started having relations, composite dialogue. The result was that Pakistan thought that it could get away with these things. And that is the main problem that I see in our relationship with Pakistan, that we do not take into account the continuous use of terrorism as a weapon of state policy by Pakistan. Both inside India, inside Afghanistan, in Iran, and the three major countries that are neighbors of Pakistan. And China also is scared of the terrorists supported by Pakistan. And yet the world lets Pakistan get off the hook. And the result of this is that then we get into incidents like Pahalgam, and then we have to retaliate militarily. Whereas if there was sustained pressure upon Pakistan politically and economically, then it would be possible to put some pressure upon the army and the civilian leadership of Pakistan to get rid of this terror machinery. But we don't do that. Pakistan was taken off the grey list and FATF. And everybody accepted that. Earlier, the fact that Hafiz Saeed is roaming freely after having been released after a hijacking meant that Pakistan should have been kept under economic sanctions by the Security Council, but nothing like that happened. We did not even move for it. So this sustained pressure upon Pakistan is extremely important.
Yeah, I just want to read out the statement from the UK Foreign Secretary talking about global response. David Lammy has said that the current tensions between India and Pakistan are a serious concern. The UK government is urging India and Pakistan to show restraint and engage in direct dialogue. I have made it clear to my counterparts in India and Pakistan that if this escalates further, nobody wins. The UK was clear in its condemnation of the terrorist attack in Pahalgam last month. Now, Professor Christine Fair, this brings us to, I think, Dilip Sinha's question. The world allows Pakistan to get off. India, too, has done sort of two steps forward, one step back, can't seem to make up its mind on whether, I think that's what Ambassador Sinha is saying, at least in the past, that used to happen. And even the Modi government initially started by sort of some kind of outreach, and then it changed, right? It changed post Uri. I can understand previously that America in particular, thought it needed Pakistan for its ops in Afghanistan. Why now? Is it ignorance? Is it a lack of priority? Do they not get it? What is the reason that Hafiz Saeed and Masood Azhar are able to live as openly with the impunity that they do? Because after all, 6 Americans were killed in the 26/11 attacks, and the Lashkar-e-Taiba was very clearly behind those attacks.
So I have to share your incredulity. Going to the statement by the British, I mean, we have to sort of remember the British have always avoided blaming Pakistan. The reason for that is that there are really important Pakistani origin vote banks in the UK. The British were very loath to act against British origin Pakistan origin terror cells, for lack of a better word. So the Brits have their own domestic motivations, because a lot of the Pakistani migrants to the United Kingdom are actually Mirpuris. So we kind of have to remember that the UK has a lot of different motivations. What's more mysterious is that of the United States. For many years, the United States also would offer these milquetoast, both sides need to do this, both sides need to do that. Obama made a very serious departure from that in 2016. Obama did not encourage both sides to pursue peace through negotiation. Obama stated very clearly the American support for India's right to defend itself. And what we've seen under Trump is a retrenchment from that. And it's I don't know if it's because the Trump administration itself is so bereft of history, and it's generally clueless. I mean, what I will say, very generally speaking, about new governments coming in. There's, for example, Marco Rubio. He's there not because Marco Rubio is a distinguished, knowledgeable person when it comes to diplomatic affairs. He's there because he's a Republican and he will basically carry out Trump's bidding. In fact, all of Trump's cabinet has been selected not because they have any professional competence, but rather because they're sycophants and they won't challenge him. So it's going to be particularly difficult, I think, working with the United States. As I said, I'm really bullish on the influence of Paul Kapoor. I'm not. I should have checked before we did the show this morning the status of his confirmation, but I'd like to believe that even if he hasn't been confirmed, that he is still providing guidance and sagacity to this administration. But if that is the case, it's not evident in the statements that we've issued, which is this both sidisms. But to your larger question, I think I'm going to state what's really obvious. Pakistan gets away with what it gets away with because of its nuclear arsenal. Pakistan has one of the fastest growing nuclear arsenals in the world. That's why it gets away with terror strikes in India. It knows that while there will be these episodic conflict slides, that their escalation to a full-fledged war is very unlikely because of nuclear weapons. And Pakistan terrorizes the international community into believing that if, for example, Pakistan were to have been put on the blacklist for FATF, as it so rightly deserved, it wouldn't have access to IMF funding, and then it would economically become insolvent, and that would usher forth or precipitate greater insecurity challenges. And this gins up, I think they're far-fetched, but this gins up breakage of the states, breakup of the Pakistan army, It raises security of Pakistan's nuclear weapons. And these are very, very low probability events, so improbable that I don't think that we should even be imagining them. But the Pakistan uses the fear around these low probability events to blackmail the international world. So the international community. So Pakistan is essentially a nuclear blackmailer.
I think that's very incisive. Ambassador Sinha, since Uri, till this moment, the attempt by India has been to call out this nuclear bluff and to show that there is space for India's military to respond below the nuclear threshold. But what Professor Fair is absolutely bang on about is that every time India seeks to do this, there will be these kind of set piece responses, like we've heard the UK Foreign Secretary say, oh, please, let's not escalate. Oh, please, India and Pakistan should talk. This is not a fight. That equivalence is hugely problematic. How concerned should we be about these kind of statements that are coming from the UK, that have come from Donald Trump?
Well, this is not new. And this is one of the reasons why I had hoped that we would not do these kinds of strikes, for the simple reason that this is how the script would play out. We would strike, and then all these countries would come in and say, no, please stop, de-escalate the situation, start talking, and then we would de-escalate and start talking. And then we would go down to some kind of a normalcy. What you said is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I had felt that we should have used this opportunity to have a sustained pressure upon Pakistan. Pakistan constantly talks about how India is trying to break up Pakistan, whereas that has never been India's policy. But I think now India should actually start promoting that policy of actually supporting the Baloch and the Afghans. The Durand Line is not a sacrosanct line that was drawn up by the British for the border between India and Afghanistan at that time. Now, it seems that Pakistan is not capable of living in peace either with India or with the rest of the world. So in that situation, we actually must start a sustained policy of actually questioning Pakistan's integrity. Pakistan is constantly talking about Kashmir. Now, there was Kalat, which joined Pakistan much later than Kashmir. Its annexation, its accession was as questionable, in fact, much more questionable than Kashmir's accession to India. But we have never questioned that. The Durand Line, we have never questioned that, and Afghanistan questions it. Now, why can't we start supporting these countries? Because we have to understand that there has to be a sustained pressure upon Pakistan that if it continues with terrorism, then it will not be just a few strikes on Muridke and Bahawalpur. It will be in a sustained effort by India to break up that country. That is the only way to stop this terror operation from coming. Now,
and you're saying that should be India's stated public position, that we...
Yes, I say that this should be India's stated policy, because the fear that the West keeps raking up that the nuclear weapons will fall in the wrong hands, they are already in the wrong hands. It is not as if the terror groups that, as Professor Fair mentioned, they are any different from the ISI which controls the country. So we have to have a sustained policy where Pakistan must realize that if it continues with this policy of promoting terrorism against us, then it cannot hope to see that our policy towards Pakistan will remain exactly as has been over the last several decades, which is that we will strike once in a while and then go back and start talking and hope that Pakistan will make some promises, as we had in the case of earlier when Musharraf met Vajpayee.
But I just have a thought that if India's position was to openly say, we support, for example, the Baluchis' right to self-determination, and so on, and you're saying that this should India doesn't need to be coy about this. Wouldn't they play victim, Professor Fair? Wouldn't they then play victim and say, see, they're trying to disintegrate us? They'll take that whine and whinge then to Western capitals.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously not a policy that I support for a variety of reasons. When one thinks about breaking up the Pakistani state, one has to ask, first of all, it's not possible. I spent a lot of time in Pakistan. Pakistanis are Pakistanis. And however, I will say that covert operations are part of full range deterrence and full spectrum deterrence and full spectrum compellence. And many Pakistanis believe, as do many Indians, Avinash Paliwal talks about this at length in his book, My Enemy's Enemy, that the Indians already engage in covert operations in Balochistan with the TTP. And this is an appropriate thing for India to be doing. India has an external intelligence agencies. This is what external intelligence agencies do. And covert operations, as I said, is a part of full spectrum deterrence and compellence. So, I don't need to say anything else about this because my strong suspicion is that India is already engaging in this. In fact, some might say that the operation in Pahalgam, the terrorist attack in Pahalgam, was a direct response to terrorism in Balochistan. This is certainly a Pakistani narrative that doesn't get a lot of play. I think that one does have to consider what are the ramifications of these covert operations. Rarely do the ramifications remain covert.
Right. I want to play out also bits of that official briefing. Two women military officers, one of the Indian Army, one of the Indian Air Force, were tasked with the job of explaining what happened in Operation Sindoor, and this is what they had to say. This is, I think, specifically about the attack on the Lashkar headquarters in Buridke. Take a look.
Buridke. यह आईबी से 18 से 25 किलोमीटर दूरी पर है। 2008 के मुंबई हमले के आतंकी भी यहीं से प्रशिक्षित हुए थे। अजमल कसब व डेविड हेडली भी यहां ट्रेन हुए थे।
आगे दूसरा आया।
Right. That's just a bit of the press conference. The whole press conference is there on our platform to watch. Ambassador Dilip Sinha, let's come back to something raised by Christine Fair. How does this de-escalation happen? It all depends on how Pakistan chooses to respond. And that response is likely to come, soon enough. I also see Professor Amitabh Mattu joining us. Good evening, Professor Mattu.
Good evening,
Dilip Sinha. Thanks, sir. Ambassador Sinha, go ahead.
Well, the de-escalation would normally take place, one hopes, if Pakistan does not retaliate, then India would be under increased pressure to start talks with Pakistan, which would mean that somebody would offer talks to holding talks in a third place. This has happened in the past also, or there would be contacts between representatives of our governments at a track 2 level, where they can work out the details. Most likely it would be by the mediation of somebody, the Russia or some other country. And then there would be talks and some kind of restoration of diplomatic relations would take place. But if Pakistan retaliates, then all bets are off, because one doesn't know how this government will react to any kind of Pakistani retaliation in which there may be further civilian casualties in India.
Yeah. Professor Mattu, let's bring you in. Professor Christine Fair, Ambassador Dilip Sinha, we're just talking about the import of this moment, Pakistan's nuclear blackmail, and Christine was telling us about, reminding us that the Lashkar and the Jaish never do attack within Pakistan, and they are, of course, cultivated assets of the Pakistan army. Now, your first comment on the import of what we've seen and where you think we might go from here.
Let me say that it's a great privilege to be on your program along with Professor Christine Fair and Ambassador Sinha, both whom I respect very much, especially Professor Fair, because she brings not only her great ethnographic knowledge of India, but also knows the beltway in Washington very well. Having said that, I think what has happened today has been unprecedented for 2 or 3 things. First of all, I think India did not cross over into airspace, Pakistani airspace, and used cruise missiles with hammer bombs to target specific sites which are not military installations in a kind of orthodox sense, but installations of the LET and the Jaish, and in Bhavalpur and Muridke and elsewhere. Secondly, it targeted sites which are not just in POK, but in Punjab. Muridke, as you know, is very close to Lahore, and Bhavalpur is also a part of the Punjab. So third fact is that Pakistan seems to have, at the moment, said that it will retaliate at a time of its choosing and at a place of its choosing. But what seems to be clear is that from India's point of view, it doesn't. These attacks were planned with the idea that they're calibrated enough for not it to be escalated to either the conventional level or indeed horrifyingly at the nuclear level, but to establish deterrence at the asymmetric level without the veneer of deniability which Pakistan intends to do, that you can subconventionally target terrorist outfits which have a deep connection with the Pakistani state, but make that fine distinction between the Pakistani state and these terrorist outfits. Now, whether Pakistan is the face saver of Pakistan claiming that it has downed the 5 Indian jets, including 3 Rafale and 1 Sukhoi and 1 MiG-29, is good enough for it to now not escalate further, or will there be public pressure and given the mindset of the army chief to retaliate in some form? We have to wait and see, and there I agree with Ambassador Sinha that what happens next will depend much on what Pakistan does. But as far as today is concerned, I think India has crossed a red line. It has said that it will not take asymmetric warfare in Jammu and Kashmir lying down, or indeed in other parts of India, and therefore targeted installations without crossing into the international border or crossing the LOC in territories which are part of Pakistan and not just POJk. So I would say that this is, if I was in some ways looking at it internationally, I think India has demonstrated that it will not take these things lying down. The whole bogey of Pakistan always playing the nuclear card or suggesting that it can continue doing this, or that India's growth story will suddenly be undermined if it becomes involved in regional conflicts. I think it's what has been said, and in some ways the mood of public opinion in this country says enough is enough, and that is reflected in the fact that you have all spectrum of public opinion, from Jairam Ramesh to Rahul Gandhi to Manish Tiwari. Manish Tiwari, in fact, writing that we should now take over Gilgit and Baltistan as well. That kind of expansive suggestion. To, of course, the BJP and the Prime Minister and the Home Minister, to the leadership of the National Conference, which is in government in Srinagar. So even Omar Abdullah's statements. So the whole spectrum of public opinion has been behind this move. And therefore, I think it's a moment which is a watershed moment in many ways. I mean, people often use the word watershed lightly, but I think this is a watershed moment. I don't know what Christine or Ambassador have to say, but for me, it is an important rupture in terms of Indian policy, and a rupture which many will see in a positive light.
Yeah, I think there's no ambiguity about how Indians feel about it, but I think we were having a more granular discussion on how geopolitics is going to unfold and what sort of the de-escalation ladder is going to be. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, because first we have to see how Pakistan will in fact respond to this, and how world opinion might work behind the scenes to contain a response from Pakistan. Since you did mention Omar Abdullah, let me just play out Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister's comments. He made a very strong statement. He said Pakistan started this. If Pakistan wants de-escalation, Pakistan has to put down its guns first. Take a look.
Clashes दोनों तरफ से नहीं हुई. शुरुआत पहलगाम में हुआ, जहां हमारे 26 बेगुनाह लोग जिस तरह उनको मारा गया, वो हम अभी भूले नहीं. उसी वक्त मरकजी हुकूमत ने कहा था कि इसका हम जवाब दे देंगे और अपने तरीके से दे देंगे. जवाब देने का तरीका यही था कि पाकिस्तान में कोई सिविलियन या कोई मिलिट्री जगह नहीं, सिर्फ वो जगह जो सब लोग जानते हैं, वहाँ यही इदारे काम करते हैं जिन्होंने पिछले 30-35 साल जम्मू कश्मीर में तबाही और बर्बादी फैलाई है. उन्हें निशाना बनाया गया, उसके अलावा कुछ नहीं. लेकिन उसके बाद लगातार कुछ इलाकों में जो पार के तरफ से बमबारी की गई, उसमें तो सीधा सीधा हमारे सिविलियन जो हैं वो टारगेट हुए. शुरुआत वहां से हुई, शुरुआत यहाँ से नहीं हुई. अगर पहलगाम में लोगों को इस तरह मारा नहीं गया होता, ये दिन नहीं आता। हम बड़े आराम से रह रहे थे। यहाँ जम्मू कश्मीर के अंदरूनी हालात भी ठीक थे, टूरिज्म का दबदबाव चल रहा था, LOC पे सीज फायर जो है वो कायम था, LOC के सीज फायर को कोई नुकसान नहीं। लेकिन ये हमारे बने हुए हालात नहीं हैं। हमने पहलगाम में जो हुआ उसका हमें एक जवाब देना था, लेकिन अब पाकिस्तान तक है कि वो इसको कितना उछालना चाहते हैं। हम में से कोई जंग नहीं चाहता। हम लोग जो खासकर जम्मू कश्मीर में रहते हैं, क्योंकि अक्सर बेशतर हमने देखा है, चाहे वो इससे पहले जो वार हुए हो या करगिल हुआ हो, वो कहीं ना कहीं जम्मू कश्मीर को ही हिट कर जाता है। हम तो चाहेंगे कि हालात जो है वो दोबारा ठीक बने, लेकिन उसके लिए पहले हमारे जो पड़ोसी मुल्क है उनको अपनी बंदूकें शांत करनी होंगी। यहाँ से फिर बंदूक चलेगी नहीं।
We don't want a war, but Pakistan started this. Pakistan has to put down its guns if they're going to even talk about India de-escalating. Professor Fair, let me come to you. You heard Amitabh Mattu saying it's a watershed moment. It has widespread support politically among the public. But your question about de-escalation is something we'll come to. I want you to talk a little bit about Asim Munir. You know, India has had its shares of encounters with somewhat unhinged Pakistan army chiefs. Musharraf was the architect of Kargil. But Munir was really, as you mentioned, unpopular on home turf because of what was happening in Baluchistan and because of the raging popularity around the jailed PTI leader Imran Khan. With this moment, what would Munir's doctrine be? You know, at this moment, how much can he afford to take this forward and up?
Yeah, I don't think that the Kahani of the downed Indian jets are going to be enough for an off-ramp with this guy. I think this guy is going to want a Pulwama / Balakot like skirmish to occur, because the more that Pakistan can say it's threatened by India, the more there's going to be rallying around the Fauj. And that's what he's going to be looking for, is to burnish his, it's really interesting, Barkha. I've been getting texts, phone calls. I even met a random army officer in the Dubai airport where Pakistanis have been saying to me, I used to hate you because of your opposition to the Pakistan army. Now I see that you were right about them all along. And I always ask them, well, that's a really interesting about face. What was your cognitive opening? And to a person, the cognitive opening has been the way in which the army has treated Imran Khan, right? He was originally the Fauj's Banda. And when that relationship ruptured and he turned against the Pakistan army miscalculated, thinking that the people would ultimately rally around the Fauj. And what's really happened is just the opposite, is that it has just caused a deepening of the popularity of Imran Khan himself. So I think Munir is actually going to benefit from a more extended skirmish like we saw following Pulwama. I don't think he's going to be looking for an immediate off-ramp.
There's been some suggestion, briefly, Christine, before I come to Ambassador Sinha and Professor Mattu. Imran's supporters have been looking at this moment for the release of Imran Khan. That could add chaos to the mix. I don't know. I don't think Munir would do it, but that's been also spoken about in Pakistan. You think it'll happen or no chance?
No chance.
Yeah, that would be my guess too. Professor Mattu and then Ambassador Sinha. Christine was talking earlier about how the Jaish is a ghar wapsi for the Deobandi terrorists, and the Lashkar only acts at the behest of the Pakistan army. We have every reason to believe that the Pakistan army would have taken Hafiz Saeed and Masood Azhar into protection, and they are likely to surface, at a given point of time. Typically, Pakistan may have tried a terror attack to demonstrate that the deterrence, to challenge India's deterrence. Right now, they can't do that because they can't own the terror attack because the world is watching. What then are Pakistan's options if you consider what Christine Fair is saying, that listen, Munir, this is Munir's salvation moment. Munir is looking at this and saying, hey, country, come together, stand behind me. I'm going to take on India. So he is a kind of Musharraf redux or Musharraf into N, if you will. Professor Mattu?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. I said that if you believe that Munir actually doesn't want to hide behind this veneer of deniability, it was a veneer, it was a superficial way of hiding behind terrorist attacks, then the other responses potentially are subconventional use of military force, including escalating tensions across the LOC, more firing that's happening already. You see, even in J&K and across Punch, there's been firing, so that he could heat up the LOC, as it were, or try a reciprocal attack on, however, on military installations. Already, if you notice that in parts of the social media, there were reports from unverified sources, and certainly not verified by India, that a brigade headquarters had been attacked in India, and it had suffered great damage. So those kind of attacks on military installations from within Pakistani airspace, or potentially, if we were to escalate it, there would be Pakistani jets flying and actually intruding into Indian airspace. Now, obviously, if there are escalation ladder is like a ladder. It's a step. India's response has been to say that you cannot carry out these terrorist attacks because we know that you are behind them. So we will not carry out deniable attacks. We'll carry out attacks in full knowledge and with full transparency of directed at these terrorist outfits. Now, it depends whether he wants to now keep it at that lower level or ratchet it up. The personality of Munir, frankly, is frightening. Most Pakistani generals have a certain professional core to their being. Even Musharraf, his commando-like first phase when he did Kargil, had a certain rationality. Munir, I don't understand. Perhaps Christine or Ambassador Sinha know him better. But his speech, which I heard, was frightening. Frightening because it reflected a kind of Manichaean view of the world. It's a kind of view which breeds irrationality. It's a it's a kind of a jihadi mindset where you believe that all the fruits of your labor here will be given to you in heaven. That's the kind of Fida'in mentality which is bred and indoctrinated into the Fida'in. Now, if he is an irrational character, then we have to hope that there are saner forces within the Pakistani army, which they recognize, like the Bajwas of the past, recognize that here is a
that's an interesting
irrational general bordering on being a lunatic. Like not even Yahya Khan could come close to this. Yahya Khan was an alcoholic drunkard who did bad to the Bengalis, but he had his major and minor vices. Here is someone who is really comes from a different. As I said, I cannot quite rationalize him. Christine seems to know a lot more about him than I do. So it would be good to get a psychological profile of him. And if there is within the core of the Pakistani army, there might be a potential rebellion.
That's a very interesting question. And Ambassador Sinha, with your permission, Christine Fair has to leave, so I'll just get a last word from her and then come to you right after that. And I think that's the perfect question. You see, when Imran Khan, that whole clash happened, even then, Pakistanis themselves were talking about a division within the Pakistan army, that the Pakistan army wasn't cohesive, wasn't on the same page. This idea that Munir has a Fida'in mentality, his very strange speech. Every Pakistan army chief has invoked Jinnah in the two-nation theory, but nobody's gone so far as to say, oh, the Muslims of Pakistan are superior in ideology and culture, which is how Sama TV reported his speech, to the Hindus of India, completely forgetting about the millions of Indian Muslims for whom this is home. Just a last word on Munir, Professor Fair.
Yeah, I'm not really sure that, I have a last word on Munir. Look, he does represent the Pakistan army. And I think anyone who thinks, what people kind of don't get about the Pakistan army is that it is an insurgent organization. The goal of the Pakistan army is not to defeat India. It knows that it can't. So how does an insurgent demonstrate that it hasn't been compelled or it hasn't been defeated by India? Well, it does so by launching these attacks. So this is actually bigger than Munir. This is a part of the Pakistan Army strategic culture. And I think that the really devastating truth is that no matter how strategic, how proportionate, how important these strikes are, including the targeting of Jaish infrastructure in Bawalpur, in Muridke and Lashkar Taiba's infrastructure there, is that this doesn't change the strategy of the Pakistan Army. What's going to happen, and Barkha, you've been covering this for so long, you know this as well as anyone. There's going to be an off-ramp to this crisis. Talks are going to resume. There's going to be a restoration of the ceasefire. India is going to buff up even more the counterinsurgency grid. It's already pretty buff. So people who are criticizing the Indian government for security lapses obviously haven't been to Kashmir recently, because it's pretty buff and it's really hard to deter every attack. But within a couple of years, it's going to look as if the Pakistan Army has been compelled by India. And how does the Pakistan Army demonstrate, look, we haven't been compelled? It's by conducting these kinds of spectacular attacks. So I think the tragedy of this is that no matter how brilliant and I'm going to take all of the benefit of the doubt, give it all to the Indians, that what they've said they've done. It doesn't change Pakistan's strategic calculus, in my assessment. And this is much larger than the mindset of Munir himself.
Got it. Thank you for that analysis, Professor Christine Fair. We'll let you go now, Ambassador Dilip Sinha. Thank you so much, Christine. Ambassador
Thank you
Dilip
all.
Sinha,
Thank you. It was a pleasure being with such an esteemed set of panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you so much. Dilip Sinha, Ambassador Dilip Sinha, let's bring you in. Do you see what Christine is forecasting, that eventually it's back to that deja vu rapprochement because the world will twist, your hand? Or with this shift, have we shown that we're not going to go down that road? But can India really walk it alone? You have the Russians supporting you. You have the Americans. I don't know if, Trump is making strange, ignorant statements, but the Americans off camera may not tie your hands. But you have the Chinese supporting the Pakistanis. You have Turkey sending ships to the Pakistanis. How do you see it playing out? Do you see it playing out like Christine said? I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, it's difficult to predict how Pakistan will play out, because as Professor Mattu said and Professor Fair said, this army chief is a little bit of an unpredictable character because of his leanings. But at the same time, we must remember that Pakistan is in deep economic trouble, and China cannot entirely bail out Pakistan. Pakistan requires the support of the IMF as well. So Pakistan will be susceptible to pressures. But China also perhaps may not want the tensions between India and Pakistan to go beyond a certain level, because China is busy right now with Taiwan and with South China Sea. So it might actually put pressure upon Pakistan to cool things down here. Now, the dilemma for the army in Pakistan is that while it wants a certain level of tension with India to legitimize itself within the country, it cannot escalate beyond a point, because it knows that any kind of open warfare would mean defeat and then the removal of the army chief himself. So they have to maintain a certain minimum level of tension, which means it is possible that Asim Munir may decide that this is the time to hold back a little, accept the Western demand for some kind of talks or some kind of de-escalation with India. At the same time, keep the options open for another terror attack in India at a later date.
So to that extent, where do we go from here? And does it all depend? I mean, Shehbaz Sharif is, addressing his country, but why recent? I think it was yesterday, a photograph, Professor Mattu, of him and his cabinet at the ISI headquarters very clearly showed you who the boss in that country is. So Sharif's just a puppet. He isn't going to decide what happens next. Nawaz Sharif has discovered this the hard way. By every time he tried to craft some sort of policy with India, he would just get booted out or arrested or sent into exile or so on. So let me bring you in on where you think it might go from here.
Not very far. We must remember that the political leadership in Pakistan is entirely right now the creation of the army, whether it is the PPP or it is PTI or it is Nawaz Sharif himself. They are all creations of the army. Yes, Imran Khan did later on break away from the army, but we must remember that Imran Khan has also been in bed with the fundamentalists. So it is not as if his leanings are any different from that of Asim Munir. He's a little more modern, he's a little more westernized, but otherwise he's as conservative and as radical in his religious views as Asim Munir perhaps himself. So we are dealing with a country where the leadership, whether it is political or the army, is radicalized. And all of them believe in using the jihadi elements because they realize that militarily they cannot defeat India. So the only way to keep India on the boil is through terrorism. And there the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar and Jaish are the instruments that all of them wish to use. So we have to draw up some long-term policies, because so far our relationship has essentially been on a yo-yo determined by Pakistan's behavior. So when Pakistan says, let's have Lahore, let's have talks, then we go for talks. Then Pakistan says, let's have trade, so we go for trade. And then Pakistan makes an attack on India, and a terrorist attack. Then again, relations go back. So the Pakistani forces realize that they cannot have improvement in relations with India beyond a certain point, because when that happens, their legitimacy or their authority, in the right for them to keep ruling Pakistan, that becomes questionable. So they would like to have a certain level of tension with India, at the same time not having an improvement in relations, the kind that we would like to see, a regular relationship between two countries and two neighbors.
Yeah. So, Professor Mattu, I think this point about the yo-yo is very important. But before we get into what an off-ramp may look like, we have to wait and see what Pakistan does. But one of the things, this past week, we have been in the Kashmir Valley, from the Wooler Lake to the line of control. And one of the things that we need to talk about is the response of the Kashmiri people. Black flags at Lal Chowk, the local Kashmiri heroes, the Poniwala Adil Hussain who wrestled with the terrorists, Sajjad the shawl seller who left his house, the safety of his house, to go and carry an injured boy on his back, candlelight vigils, protest marches, from the line of control to the plains. You had the Kashmiris rise up like never before. What about that as a potent counter to Pakistan that has claimed to speak on behalf of the Kashmiri people? That is under challenge. I mean, we shouldn't underestimate the significance of that, Professor Mattu. Could we unmute Professor Mattu, please? Yeah.
What I'll do, Barkha, is first address the question you asked me, and then actually play out what I think might be 4 scenarios, if I may. The first, I think the greatest positive, if there is a positive in all this, is the overwhelming sentiment against violence. The collective conscience of the people of Kashmir was deeply traumatized and disturbed by what had happened in Pahalgam. It was unprecedented. So many tourists being killed. I don't remember when in the Lidar Valley, other than the kidnapping of those and killing of the foreign tourists by the Al Farhan in Aru, that this had happened before of the same scale. So to a man, woman and child, Kashmir responded with an overwhelming sense of anger, even shame, across the political divide, from the Mirwais in his Friday prayer asking for a minute's silence in the Jama Masjid, to Sajjad Lone, Umar Abdullah, Mehbooba Mufti. It wasn't a single political organization or civil society outfit which did not come out. Now, I think it's important not to put Kashmiris on the hot spot all the time, which is what is happening because of the all-pervasive, intrusive media, that you want to look for a contrarian Kashmiri often, or a Kashmiri who's under so much pressure to take a stand that if he doesn't take a stand, you hold it in some ways against him. So I think it's important to nurture this sentiment, because after all, the greatest force multiplier, the greatest source of durable peace will be Kashmiris at peace with themselves and at peace with a prosperous, stable India, which will and totally integrated with that idea of India. So and I think it's good that the Prime Minister, the Home Minister have recognized that sentiment, and I hope that can be nurtured. And I hope in some ways that can be nurtured to a point where counterintuitively statehood is granted to Kashmir. I can't think of a better moment in some ways to demonstrate the willingness of the Republic of India to move in that direction. Because look, after all, incidents like this will happen when you have Kashmir as a union territory when law and order is a function of the Lieutenant Governor, but really of the Union Home Ministry. So you can have security failures, you can have intelligence failures, and as long as you have the larger sense of political machinery in your hands, there's no harm in giving Jammu and Kashmir statehood. So I think that is, Barkha, as you know, that you've never seen such a sentiment. I haven't seen such a sentiment.
Yeah.
And what needs to be done is to protect Kashmiris outside from becoming targeted by really, frankly, extremist marginal elements who do not represent the collective conscience of India or the voice of India, or indeed individuals who actually talk about the importance of Hindu-Muslim fellowship, including, for instance, the wife of the late naval officer being hounded in some ways, which is very, very tragic and really extremely sad. I felt extremely not just sorrowful, but almost ashamed for what had happened in the social media as far as she was concerned. But
absolutely.
Look at the scenarios. The most optimistic scenario is that deterrence is established. Pakistan, the claim of Pakistan downing 5 Indian jets is enough to satisfy domestic public opinion, and Pakistan doesn't ratchet it up. So you do that, and India has achieved what it wanted to achieve, demonstrated that it will cross red lines, and also targeted the elite and the Jaish-e-Mohammed. So there is in some ways a virtual ceasefire now, and it's back to normal. Then India has to play for time, because ultimately, given the social and economic and political balkanization that's happening in Pakistan, India, if it continues with its growth story, Pakistan will be too marginal to its interests in the next 10, 15 years. That's the optimistic scenario. You may not be friends, you may not be great cordial partners. The less optimistic scenario is the one in which Pakistan responds. India has to act again. And that's the unpredictable scenario for which you'll have to see what happens next. But at every level of the escalation ladder, it is important for India to demonstrate superiority, to demonstrate domination. That's easier said than done, but that is the scenario number 2. The third scenario is one which you talked about, the international community coming together. But given how President Trump, the incoherence of his policies or even his ideas, and I'm not going to America in the next few weeks, so I can say that without being stopped at immigration in JFK. But the incoherence of which he says that this is a century-old conflict and what a shame. It's really, if that incoherence translates into policy, you don't know what is going to happen. So I don't see great hope in the international community of trying to, as someone said, as you said, or Christian Fair said, getting intervening. In any case, I think the presence is going to be marginal. The UN Security Council is going to be dysfunctional on this case. So India has to sort it out with Pakistan, and that's that's the way it should be. Because if Pakistan has to be taught a lesson, the Pakistani army has to be taught a lesson. It is India which must do it on its own.
Let me actually welcome our new guests, Ambassador Yash Sinha and Padma Rao, back with us. I know both Professor Mattu, I think Professor Mattu, you might be able to stay maybe another 5-10 minutes, but let me get a last word in from Ambassador Dilip Sinha before I come to Yash Sinha and Padma Rao. Go ahead, Dilip Sinha, with your last thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Barkha. Thank you for having me at this very, very sober discussion on this extremely difficult issue. I entirely agree with Professor Mattu that the most important gain from the recent developments in Kashmir has been, and the response that the people of Kashmir have given and the leadership of Kashmir across the board has given to the attacks in Pahalgam is extremely valuable, and that must be preserved. And I think one of the things that we should start doing now is to start moving towards giving full statehood to J&K. That is the development that we need to move towards within the country, and also to ensure that there is no action of the kind that social reaction of the kind that we have had of Kashmiris being targeted in the rest of the country. On that, again, the government must come down very strongly. As far as Pakistan is concerned, we have to keep our army alert so that in case Pakistan retaliates, the damage to our civilians is minimized and that we are able to defend ourselves, because we really cannot predict whether Pakistan will retaliate or not. But if it does, if the damage is kept to the minimum, then we'll be able to move on and move on towards normalization much faster than if there were to be large-scale damage within the country in case Pakistan retaliates. I think this is all that I can say at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador Dilip Sinha. Ambassador,
if I
yeah,
may,
you need to go as well.
Yeah, thank
well,
you so much,
add to
and
that.
I hope you'll invite me again, and I'll come back
Of
again with
course.
relaxation.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. Professor Amit Amar to Ambassador Dilip Sinha. Let me get the conversation going now with Padma Rao and Ambassador Yash Sinha. Ambassador Yash Sinha, I'll start with you. You know, we had Christine Fair, Professor Christine Fair on this segment, and she's, of course, as you will know, spent a lifetime looking at Pakistan, and she made a couple of interesting comments. She first explained that the Lashkar and the Jaish, people don't realize this, the world doesn't realize this, they only conduct terror strikes outside of Pakistan, never within Pakistan. She described the Jaish-e-Mohammed to be a ghar wapsi, these are her words, for Deobandi terrorists, and the Lashkar to be an outfit that only works at the behest of the Pakistan army. Yet she argued that the Pakistan army is an insurgent outfit. So it's not going to change even after this. If it's not going to change even after this, and Asim Munir is kind of more unhinged than Musharraf, where do we go from here? Ambassador Yash Sinha, I'll start with you, sir. I'm so sorry, I can't.
Agree.
Yeah, now I can hear. Start again, sir. Yeah.
I think thank you so much for having me again on the show. I heard the previous speakers, Professor Bhattu and Ambassador Dilip Sinha, and I couldn't agree with them more. I think this is a great opportunity. We need to sort of reach out to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. I think political initiatives are required, but that is different. We're talking about a security situation, and I still maintain that the optimistic scenario that Professor Mattu outlined, I wish that actually transpires, but I doubt it, because I think the Pakistanis know in the heart of hearts that they didn't shoot down 5 Rafales. And despite the fact that BBC is on a sticker, is carrying a Pakistani comment, I mean, I thought BBC would verify, but then BBC is BBC. But I think they will resort to some sort of retaliation. What that will be, only time will tell. But I think as far as Pakistan is concerned and the army is concerned, I had said it earlier in some other debate, that the best option, the best scenario is that the army is forced to return to the barracks. For that, for that you need a popular movement in Pakistan, which is not happening. I mean, we need Munir discredited, and if there's any way we can help in doing that, perhaps we look at it, especially if Pakistan decides to retaliate with kinetic action. But I think it's very important that, and I'm not saying that, you establish democracy in Pakistan. We don't. We know what happens when democracy is established in Pakistan. It's a sham democracy. But if there is any way, and even if Imran Khan comes out of jail and becomes the prime minister again, I think policies towards India will change marginally, because I think we know his attitude. So I think for us, it is imperative to look at how we can tackle Pakistan, manage Pakistan in the foreseeable future. I'm one of those people who you could call me slightly a cynic, but I think we probably should help Pakistan along the way to its own doom.
But how do we do that? By supporting the Baluchis, by supporting other insurgent movements, or by what?
There are various ways you can do it. Economically squeeze them as much as you can. I know we don't have all the levers with us. Our trade is minimal, it's stopped. But there are other levers that we need to exercise through the IMF, through the FATF, and seriously, because if unfortunately we've not been able to nab these terrorists who perpetrated this horrendous attack on the 22nd, but if we are able to get some sort of verifiable intelligence or verifiable evidence, which we can present to the international, to the FATF in particular and the IMF, then it would help us in isolating Pakistan, getting them back on the grey list. Because once they come back on the grey list, they're going to face a very uphill task. And for that, we need the help of our friends internationally. Unfortunately, the statements emanating so far for various capitals have been at best lukewarm. Some of them, like Singapore, Indonesia, have strongly condemned terrorism. Of course, Israel is always behind us, but I think we need to see if we can drum up some support once we get some concrete or some, we won't get a smoking gun, but some sort of credible evidence, because we really need to squeeze Pakistan. We cannot let this, pass and then go on a business as usual and wait for the next terrorist attack.
Yeah, Padma, you and Yash Sinha were talking with us in the morning as well. And since then, the responses that have come in from capitals across the world, many of them are just irritating, because it's the same Western trope. Oh, please restrain, please de-escalate, oh, please talk, not recognizing that this is not a fight of two equals in some battlefield. This is India's right to retaliate for a terror attack, which is an instrument of policy for the Pakistani state, right? Now, I don't think we can count. I mean, Ambassador Sinha described himself as a cynic. I'm even more cynical. I feel like the West doesn't get this. They don't get it. Till it's one of their own who's been killed, till it's one of their own bombing operations, they don't get it. So therefore, Yash Sinha has already made the point that, look, how America responds counts. Christine Fair was pointing out that Trump's nominee for South Asia gets Pakistan, Paul Kapoor, and therefore there's some hope there. But what do you say, Padma?
I agree. I just want to go back to what the others were saying about the various statements coming, including yourself just now, about the various statements coming out of Western capitals predominantly. Comparatively, I don't find President Trump's reaction that bad, actually. It was more non-committal than anything else. I think it's a lot better than what the UN Secretary General said, urging maximum restraint on both sides. Yeah. I mean, that was really over the top, despite the fact that, as Vikram Mishri, Foreign Secretary, pointed out today, evidence of the link between this front and Lashkar had been, which is a proscribed group, according to the UN itself, has been given to them 3 times over the last 1.5 years. So there is no way that they could have just been sleeping on it. That's point number 1. Point number 2 on Kashmir's status, which was also discussed, statehood may be a good time, but right now I think the priority really should be, now that we've set about this task, to eliminate the scourge of terrorism. Nobody else is going to do it for us, as world capitals have shown, as reactions are showing, as both of you have pointed out. I think we're pretty much on our own there. And a final point, which I really want to ask Yash, actually. Yash has I think I agree with you, economic squeeze is one way, but Yash, how can we do that without global cooperation, which is evidently missing, because, and then you said that, as long as we provide them evidence and the linkages and all that. But look at what happened in the case of 2611. I mean, it could not have been a more public trial of Ajmal Kasab. It could not have been greater evidence that we provided all Western capitals. Did anything change in attitude? No, nothing changed. And just to close that subject, I'll give you a small anecdote, Barkha, of what happened to me today. As you can imagine, being, with the European media for so long, I have been receiving phone calls from various papers, dailies, print media. Let's stick to the print media, asking for stories, reports on what happened on Operation Sindoor. And it is routine journalistic norm, and I know, that print media, when you write for the print media, you get what is known as a playback, which is a copy of your article after it's edited and chopped and everything and laid out, so that you as the author can take a final look and make sure everything's okay. Now, this was refused to me today. And I know why. It's the old story of gunman versus terrorist, one man's freedom fighters, another man's terrorists. And I, in turn, Barkha, I've just simply had enough of this. So I refuse to. It makes no difference to me. I said, in that case, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to. I offer them an opinion piece. I said, in that case, you take an opinion piece from me, not a piece which you can, do whatever you want with and refuse to show me, So we parted on mutually amicable terms, in the sense that, at least for today, and I said, I'm not doing a report. Nobody touches my copy, I mean, enough is enough. I'm tired of this freedom fighter versus terrorist.
No, it's highly irritating.
Exactly.
It's very, very, very irritating. But your question to Ambassador Yash Sinha, it's an important one. I'm not saying that the world is going to stand shoulder to shoulder with Pakistan. They will lean towards India, but not with enough granularity to understand that this is not a fight between India and Pakistan, that both countries need to sit at the dialogue table. You know, two children have fought in kindergarten. If they talk, they'll make up. I mean, and this thing about dossiers, I agree with Padma. I mean, how many dossiers were furnished? Yes, the Havur Rana has been extradited, but
That's
David
the
Headley
one.
is still sitting, rumored to be some sort of deep state asset in America. So how can it be that the world is okay with Hafiz Saeed and Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar roaming around with impunity in Pakistan? After all, 6 Americans were killed in the Mumbai attacks. I mean, does America not want to bring the Lashkar to justice?
Roam
I can't
around
hear
too
him.
much now.
Yeah,
I
so
think
start again. Yeah.
I think Masood Azhar will not roam around freely and nonchalantly from now on. I heard he's lamenting the death of 10 family members
That's
in
right. That's right. We
close
have
aid.
reported that. Yeah.
But as far as terror in Pakistan is concerned, everybody knows it's the terror factory. As long as they don't hit, I was in the UK, so I know the official cooperation between British intelligence and the ISI. And the whole focus was that there shouldn't be another 7/7 in London or in the UK. And to that extent, they succeeded. However, I think we have to fight our battles on our own. Now, I don't want to go on your channel and say that, yes, we must support the Baluchis, we must support the Jai Sindh, we must support the remnants of the MQM. These matters are decided by more competent people who are aware of the state of play there. But what I'm saying, we need a multi-pronged approach. Economic squeeze is one of them. You're right. We cannot, squeeze Pakistan without the help of the others. But we certainly can play a role in the room. I mean, look at this. I mean, I mentioned Turkey, but there are other countries. Our market. Can we leverage our market? Because if we continue the way we are going, can we leverage our market to change the behavior of some of these countries, at least partially? Because look at the UK. Look at what happened yesterday. When the FTA and the double contribution agreement was announced, to concluded, their statements, they've been a bit circumspect. BBC won't change, but I have to do BBC's credit. I saw someone from Chatham House who gave a very good account of what actually happened. And okay, he was of Indian origin, but it was a very good, without any biases as such, a factual account of what happened. So if BBC could interview him, I don't know whether they'll play it again, but I was surprised to see that. So I think, Padma knows, and the German papers and the German broadcasters, what their biases are, the French, etc. We can't change that overnight, but we certainly can use what we have as leverage to try and see whether they will change. They will not change their reporting. They will still call them militants. The UN Secretary General will still make anodyne statements hyphenating India and Pakistan. And if an Unmogib office had been hit, then perhaps his tone might change. But I'm not wishing that at all. I do hope it will not happen. But what I'm trying to say is that we really need to leverage our strengths. And just one, if I may, 26/11. I was very intimately involved with the follow-up action. Sometimes we ourselves shoot ourselves in the foot. I recall when an inquiry team had come from Pakistan. You might say it's a sham team, but you have to go through the motions. We didn't really entirely go through the motions in terms of the prevailing law in both countries, which is the British, what we inherited from the British. But I won't dwell on that further. That gave them the excuse to go back and throw out the case. They were waiting for that. They would have done it in any case, but they blamed us because we didn't follow due procedure. But that is only minutiae details which are not important right now. What we need to do is follow up as far as this attack is concerned, make Pakistan pay. And we've already begun it. We've hit them where it hurts, actually the terrorist infrastructure. If they foolishly respond in kind, then we are up for more escalation. And I'm sure once the escalatory ladder is scaled, you will find all the big powers rushing in with statements and telephone calls and midnight calls, and then we are back to square one. But we in India should never treat it as square one, because it's just a process which we should carry forward to its logical conclusion.
Right. I want to get final comments from both of you now. Padma, I'll start with you. I think Ambassador Yash Sinha has painted a picture of how the escalatory ladder can be managed, might be managed. But honestly, who was saying this morning, we've spoken to so many people, this is my brain, I have some brain fog here. But one of the generals, I think, was saying that you can't impose Indian rationality on Pakistan. Like the way we think, they don't think, right? And so the way we are imagining this playing out, we're imagining that, okay, they're also not going to seek a massive escalation. But the fact is that they're not rational players. If they were rational players, Munir wouldn't have made the speech he did. Pahalgam would not have happened. We wouldn't have been fighting their deep state for decades. What might happen next? We had a cryptic comment by former Army Chief Manoj Naravane, picture abhi baki hai. That either means that there is more left in India's military plan. It could mean that. Or it could mean that Pakistan will react and then India will strike again, depending on how Pakistan reacts. Padma.
I think I said this in the morning as well, in fact, to Yash, who's here again, that I think the way they will react, I mean, Yash was also pointing out that there will be a reaction. We don't know what kind of reaction. I think that they will react in the way they know best, through another terror attack. And that can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be within India. It can be outside India. It can be, I mean, we've seen plenty
of But they can't own a terror attack at this moment. Padma, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but they can't own a terror. They have to do something they can own for their own people.
They won't own it. They won't own it, but everybody will know that it was done by them. I mean, this is what I suspect, and this is what I intuitively feel, simply because it would be easier to carry that out rather than a conventional strike, rather than, even limited strikes, because India is on high alert. And, I have a question. We're talking so much about this international cooperation over economically squeezing Pakistan, or support from the international community. Yash, again, and Barkha, I'd like to ask both of you this question. To what extent will sustained Western interest in Afghanistan continue to play a role in how the West approaches this operation, and this whole sort of India's determination to wipe out terror now? Either you're with us or or we are on our own, and there's a clear determination, and I think India's never been as united as before over this determination. But for me, I think the main reason why all these countries, because privately, they will all admit to you, and they will all joke about, oh yes, and you guys are the victims of terrorism in India and all this. But when it comes to the media, when it comes to official representation, official statements, there is always a reserve. And I pretty much believe that it is mainly because, especially in Europe, which doesn't have as close, ties as we do with perhaps the United States or with other countries. European countries have had a taste of a military presence in Afghanistan through NATO, and there is that vague sort of left liberal sort of dreaming of restoring democracy to Afghanistan, and removing and women's rights, and all that kind of thing. There is no pragmatism there at all as far as this region is concerned. So to what extent is that going to continue to play a role? To what extent is Afghanistan going to continue to play a role in their thinking on this region? I wanted to ask actually both of you.
It's a great question, and my own sense, but I'll defer to Ambassador Yash Sinha, is that the West is out of excuses. They cannot use Afghanistan as an excuse. You've got friction between the Taliban-led government in Afghanistan and Pakistan. The Americans have exited Afghanistan. That old trope, oh, we need the Pakistanis to manage our situation in Afghanistan, that's dead and buried. Secondly, this is the week where you're bombing the Houthis. Israel is doing what it's doing. I mean, for now, the West is just, sorry, I never talk like this on my shows, but it's galling. And I just can't imagine that Afghanistan can be pulled out of the woodworks of the past to be used as another excuse. I'll let Ambassador Sinha have the last words, but you
Sorry, yeah, just a quick interjection, just to say that, but there have been noises coming out of the West that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was too hasty. The fact that they left 12,000 weapons at the Bagram air base, which are now all over the place, they've proliferated all over the place, they've fallen into the wrong hands. So there is a rethink on that exit from Afghanistan. And there is also a rethink given the large number of refugees who are streaming into Europe, and they're creaking at the seams, and they don't want these people. There's this growing sort of antagonism against Islam and Muslims.
No, I see your,
so given
I see
all
your
those,
point.
Given all those,
I see your point. I see your point.
Yeah.
FM Jaishankar, meanwhile, in tweet after tweet, that's former Chief Naravne's Abhi Picture Baki hai tweet. FM Jaishankar is dialing the world. I think that's what's happening right now, and you can see he's talking to all the world, his counterparts across the world. Ambassador Sinha, Afghanistan surely can't be an excuse, but nuclear blackmail of Pakistan. Yes, India has called Pakistan's nuclear bluff, but the world doesn't necessarily understand it, and the world keeps seeing it through the lens of possible nuclear conflict, and that's why Pakistan gets away. How do we call that bluff for the world to see? We've called it militarily, but for the world to see.
Barkha, if you were in their shoes, I'm not talking about the West, but extra regional power or a country outside the region, there is always this fear of a nuclear exchange. And they don't understand. Some of them do, some of them don't. But that's beside the point. What I come to Afghanistan, what Padma had asked, the shambolic withdrawal of the ISAF or the NATO and led by the US I don't see, you're talking about revived interest. The only revived interest I see is occasional statements on the status of women. And these are these left liberal people who just make statements, who can't do anything to influence. Yeah, they can host a Afghan women's cricket team or a football team somewhere and play a match and then make a big hoo-ha about it. But that's not helping the women in Afghanistan. And the only thing that I see is in all his statements, and I have a due respect, President Trump mentioned about Bagram Air Base recently, and he mentioned that the Chinese have got it. Now, I'm not aware whether the Chinese control Bagram Air Base. I doubt it, but he would have better intelligence. Now, if that is so, and he has expressed interest in criticism of the previous administration, then is there a revival, a geostrategic revival in the Trump administration on the AFPAC area? Because it's not just Afghanistan. We are again hyphenating AFPAC as we did the early days of Obama, and So I think there may be an interest there, but I think right now he's got his hands full with Ukraine, with Gaza, with the Houthis, and what's happening in the United States.
All right, we will leave it there. It's been a marathon session for us, and we're going to keep going. But I will say thank you. Both of you have been with us through the day, and we've learned enormously from both of you. Ambassador Yash Sinha, Padma Rao, thank you. Our continued coverage will continue. We will have a 360-degree perspective on what happens now that India has struck not just inside POJk, but very importantly inside Pakistan, Punjab, taking out 70 terrorists, including 10 members of Masood Azhar's family. Masood Azhar is a Jaish terrorist who was released in exchange for the safety of passengers on board the hijacked plane IC-814 in 1999. Many Indians are not old enough or were born after that time, so you do not remember who Masood Azhar was. The Jaish-e-Mohammed was most recently responsible for the Pulwama terror attack, and now 10 members of his family, Masood Azhar, have been taken out. 24 missiles, 9 terror bases, Bahawalpur to Muridke, the Indian military striking at the heart of Pakistan, Punjab. It is a day to salute our armed forces. It is a day for Indians to stand as one. It is a day to think of the victims of the Pahalgam terror attack. I won't say that they will get closure at what's happened, but as Shubham Dwivedi's wife told me, for the first time, I think her husband was killed by terrorists, might be at peace. We offer our salutations to India's armed forces, the risks they take with their lives every day to keep our country safe. Keep watching the Mojo Story. We're not done yet. Our coverage continues from the ground analysis, interviews, ground reports. Thank you for watching. Take care. Jai Hind.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo's Story and support independent, robust journalism.